You're absolutely right. Financial literacy courses are not mandatory in schools. In fact, only about 6 states require high schoolers to take a personal finance course in order to graduate. And so, Yaneli, as Director of Educational Outreach at Next Gen Personal Finance, what is your advice for Amila?
I think I can speak to this in two ways. One is from the Director of Educational Outreach perspective, but the other perspective I can speak to is being a child who grew up in a low-income environment and attended public schools that were Title I funded my whole life in New York City. And like you, I didn't get a chance to take these classes. So what I would do if I could go back and be 15 or 16 years old again, of course, everyone's going to tell you, you got to learn, you got to read books, you got to watch videos, you have to immerse yourself in this knowledge. But the reality is that when I was 15 and 16 years old, I was focused on who I had a crush on. I was focused on celebrity drama. I wanted to know which rapper was dating what rapper girlfriend, and all that stuff was what I cared about, what name brands I was wearing. So we have to meet you where you are. Okay. As a teenager, there are things that you care about, that are not going to be in textbooks all the time, but you have to find a way to balance out what you care about and you're already doing and what matters for your future. So I would say go on social media, because I know you're already there. You're on TikTok, you're on Instagram, you're on Twitter. So follow hashtags that will teach you about personal finance. Hashtag financial literacy, hashtag personal finance, hashtag savings goals, hashtag investing 101, hashtag debt free. These are the types of things that will help you to put into your feed on social media information about personal finance from a social media perspective, right? Quotes and information, links from financial influencers that are funny, that are young, that are relatable. So you can just kind of blend it in with what you're already doing and start learning early. And then the second thing I would say is just really make sure that you're advocating for the kids that are coming up behind you. Because the reality is that your little cousins and the kids in your community and, your little brothers and sisters, they're going to end up going to the public school that you went to as well. And if they didn't have the classes when you were there, chances are they're not going to have them for your little brothers and sisters and your little cousins and the kids in your community. So you have to advocate for your school to make change so that the next generation of students actually does learn it. And you can do that by starting a petition, by becoming a student advocate so that you can demand a change for your generation. Yeah.
That's great advice, Yaneli. Roberto Gonzalez is going to join us now. He's a senior at Kellogg'sville High School in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And Roberto, what's your question?
Hey, good afternoon to all from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm grateful to be here and thanks for having me. My question is, does financial literacy actually reduce economic inequality?
Yaneli, what do you think?
Excellent question. By itself, no. In collaboration with other efforts, absolutely 100% yes. There's research that shows that improving financial knowledge and increasing financial knowledge through personal finance education directly connects to how much wealth inequality there is. So you can actually have more wealth for yourself when you understand different financial concepts like investing, like saving, like avoiding predatory lending practices. There's the banking industry made $30 billion and over $30 billion in 2019 alone, just off overdrafting fees. So this is why at NGPF, for example, we teach students what an online bank account looks like. And you log in and do a simulation so you can understand, so you can avoid overdraft fees, so you can understand these systems at play, because financial knowledge and education by itself won't work if we don't couple it with the capacity and the capability for you to go out and put into practice those skills and the knowledge that you're learning in your personal finance class. But I absolutely agree with Sahil. It needs to be a national mandate. Every single state needs to require a full semester standalone course. And that's why we do the work that we do.
Absolutely. 6 is definitely not enough. 6 states, not enough. Needs to be in every school. And probably starting before high school, wouldn't you say, Yaneli? I mean, it should start even earlier.
Absolutely. It just definitely start earlier. There are states that even have mandates at the middle school level, and NGPF actually just released a middle school curriculum. So I think that there's opportunity K through 12. It doesn't just have to be high school. I totally agree.
You offer a lot of resources through, your own social media, Miss Be Helpful, as well as through Next Gen Personal Finance. What are some resources that are out there that people should really be taking advantage of, teenagers should know about during this pandemic in particular?
Well, I think for me personally, one of the awesome resources that I get to work on is FinCap Friday, which is a weekly current event series that I put together with NGPF, and it comes out on YouTube and on the blog. And one of the things that I recently talked about was pandemic entrepreneurs, which is this phenomenon that this year, almost 1 million more entrepreneurs filed for an EIN number to establish their business as compared to the same time last year in 2019. So when we say like COVID is going to scare young people and it's going to restrict entrepreneurship, actually the data does not support that. We want to bring in teenagers to entrepreneurship, which is why we have a whole mini unit at NGPF. So one of the things that's amazing about the work we're doing is that it's all free. So if you're a teen right now and you're watching this, or you're a teacher and you're watching this, go to ngpf.org. Everything on the site is free, including entrepreneurship lesson plans, activities, games, videos, and then that links to other resources as well. NGPF is a great hub, but it's not the only place. There's so many free resources online, and we have to tap the free ones because to a lot of the points that were already made, certain schools just don't have the budget to be able to make that curriculum accessible. So we have to keep it free, and that's a core part of our mission.
Do you find, Yaneli, that teens are ever sharing your information with one another? And what do you think is the best way? Again, we're hoping teachers are watching and that they're using this information. But if you just want it for yourself and you want to share it with a club or share it with a group of friends, what are the best ways to do that? Can you do that?
Absolutely. And you should. Like, honestly, self-study is one of the best ways to learn anything because you are teaching it to yourself and nobody can take that knowledge from you once you know it. So what I would say is go onto the website and others as well, not just ours. But if you go onto ngpf.org and you click on the curriculum, you can do any of the lessons completely by yourself at home. Click the articles and read them, answer the questions, watch the videos, and devote your time to yourself to really improve your own knowledge of money and personal finance. And then, like you said earlier, Sharon, if the students are finding things that they like are funny, this video, this meme, share it, send it to somebody and say, check out this video. You're going to learn about index funds, which I didn't know about until I watched this video, little things like that. So it's definitely about putting yourself out there to find the time in your schedule. If you can find time to, shop online and talk to your friends on Instagram, you can find time, 15 minutes to study personal finance for yourself, at home. I think it's definitely possible, especially on the phone or on the computer nowadays.
Absolutely. You have the time to study and you have the time to share it too, because you're going to be sharing stuff anyway.
Exactly.
So share some of the personal finance knowledge you got too. I want to get everyone's input on this one. Sophia Moreno is joining us from Tempe, Arizona, and she's a great question I think everyone can answer. Sophia, what's your question?
First of all, it's such a pleasure to be here and representing the state of Arizona. My question is, in terms of financial literacy during our current virtual world, what is the single most important thing for young adults to understand?
You just gave a lot of information about next gen personal finance, but what is something that you kind of put out there over and over again because you think it's so important for people to know in terms of financial literacy, for teens in particular?
Yeah. I think for teens in particular, it's tough because there's two positions. One, and your question is the single most important, which I know makes it hard, but I'm gonna say two things. One is your age is your biggest privilege. You have so much time ahead of you in your life to take advantage of, to benefit from what Sahil mentioned, which is compounding returns or compounding interest. So you gotta start, even if you don't have money right now because you're too young, you gotta start learning about how investing in the stock market works, because that is the greatest generator of wealth in our time. And for me, growing up in a Latino household, my parents are from Dominican Republic and they're immigrants. They never had the type of job where you could go clock in, clock out and have a 401k. They never had that type of job. They worked unforgiving jobs that didn't allow that. And so for me, taking advantage of a 401k and learning about a Roth IRA, which are options to get a tax advantaged investment happening in the stock market, even if you don't have a 401k, the earlier you learn about this, the better off you're going to be, because when you do get your first job, when you do start making money, you don't have to pause and learn. You already know. So when you get the money, you can just get started and take action immediately. So that's what I would say, is to start learning about investing and generating wealth now, because that knowledge will definitely benefit you when you do come into the money, because you might not have the money now, and that's okay. But the time that you have is what's on your side. So time and knowledge is what I would say.
Your knowledge as soon as you possibly can is essentially what you're saying, correct?
Absolutely. Build the knowledge, and then as soon as you come into money, to be able to apply the knowledge, do it as soon as possible.
You know, both of my teens got their working papers when they were 14. And so in New York, that's when you can start working. And the summer job money, the camp counselor money, all of that went to an account. And at the end of the summer, my son, my oldest, had enough money to put into exactly what Yaneli's talking about, a Roth IRA. And I, had to help him with it, or, tell him a little bit about it. But this is an account now that is in his name. This is his money, and it's going to be able to grow over time. And when she's talking about an IRA, an individual retirement account, teens like, why do I need to put my money in something like that? But this is an account where you put your money in, you can take it out anytime you want, your own contributions. Okay. So it could kind of be like an emergency fund. It could be your, part of your college savings fund. But that, what it allows you to do is to invest in stocks, invest in mutual funds, invest in things that allow you to build wealth. There's, of course, a lot of information that our panelists could share about these types of things. But I just want to say that personally, I think that all of you, or many of you, are entrepreneurs and you're already creating your own income. That income should go into a Roth IRA, at least part of it, right away. You're able to do that. If you're working, you have earned income, you're able to do that right now. And that might be a great end of the year thing to do, to start that, what Sahil was talking about, compound interest, building that over decades of working and saving and investing. We had a young student write in and they asked, what do you think people in positions of power will have to do in order for all students from all backgrounds to be able to have an equal opportunity at success? And that's a question that we could go into for quite some time. But if any of you have any quick thoughts about that, what would you say?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Yes,
I
please,
have two thoughts. Yeah, so two thoughts. One would be that you have to, as a person who has power, access to power and money and wealth, you will have to be willing to sacrifice some of that power and some of that wealth so that others can have access to some of that power and some of that wealth. And that's very hard to do. There are studies that show that if you give monkeys a couple of apples and then you take one back, even though they had none to start with, they freak out when you take an apple and leave them with just one because of loss aversion. But people in power who have a lot of wealth have to get to a point where they're willing to sacrifice some of it to give others an opportunity. And then the second thing they have to be willing to do is learn and educate themselves and invest in their own knowledge. Read books like, The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. I just finished that book and it was incredible. It opened my eyes to how there are systemic issues of lack of access to capital and home mortgages and things like that in communities of color. So we have to be wealth. We have power and we have wealth. We got to educate ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
well, that's a great answer. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wrap it because we're at 2:00 right now. But listen, there are so many great questions that continue to come in, and I want to make sure that you all, as Akbar have said, are networking. Make sure that you're following all of our panelists. Reach out to them. DM them, send them your questions. I want to thank you all so very much for joining us today. Thank you for leading the charge, Jack Koskowski from Junior Achievement. Thank you for partnering with us to have this. There are so many fantastic questions from students all over the nation, and we appreciate those. But we also need to thank our panelists who've done a great job in answering your questions. Sahil Bloom, Rianka Dorsonville, Yaneli Espinal, Akbar Bajabiamila, and our special guest, Mark Morial.